All right, back on the conversation. We gave COVID relief, a significant amount, to individuals, to corporations, but also to states, because states needed help with their hospitals, with taking care of people. But when you give money to red states, you don't really know how they're going to spend it. And Alabama's got a doozy for us with what they did with their COVID relief bill. Melody Schreiber from The Guardian joins us to talk about it. Melody, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No problem. So what did the good folks who lead the Alabama government decide to do with $400 million of the COVID relief bill?
On Friday, Alabama Governor Kay Ivey signed into law a bill to use $400 million of their COVID relief funding to build more prisons. They're planning to build 3 mega prisons to replace facilities that are in disrepair, that basically can't be used anymore. And they're putting their COVID relief funding toward that.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're a reporter. Do putting more people in prison, is that likely to make them safer from COVID or less safe from COVID?
That's a great question. Research has shown that prisons have actually driven the spread of COVID. We likely saw millions more cases than we needed to, because the conditions of a prison are actually perfect for the spread of COVID. You're close together. You rarely take breaks from each other. There's not a lot of personal protective equipment. There weren't a lot of tests. It's very difficult to isolate entire prisons humanely, and so prisons have really contributed to the spread of COVID, and not just in the prisons, it's also in the wider community, and the wider community comes into the prisons. You might think of it as kind of an island, but you have people coming in every day who work there. You have people cycling into the system and then leaving. And so where there is a lot of spread in a prison, there will be in the community as well, and vice versa.
Yeah, so look, I'm surprised more people didn't get it, because it's an enclosed space with tons of people. With this, what are you going to do? Even if they gave you masks, you're going to wear a mask 24/7. You're going to wear a mask while you're sleeping. Basically, almost nobody's going to do that. So that means, especially pre-vaccine, you were condemning 1 to 2% of everyone in prison to death. And it didn't really matter where you were from, what you did. Was it a robbery? Was it jaywalking? Was it smoking pot? It doesn't matter, because you had a huge percentage chance of getting COVID, and then you had a couple of percentage chance once you got COVID of dying. And so, and now, funny enough, Melody, you just did a story about one of the Capitol rioters saying, well, I'm not vaccinated, because of course she's a right winger. And she said, what, are you going to put me in prison? That'll endanger my life. Which, I'll ask it in the form of a question. So it feels like a lot of right wingers, and in the context of Alabama, for example, which is deeply red, right, don't think it's going to apply to them. Like we can break the law, we can break into the Capitol, and I mean, we're not going to go to prison. That's for minorities, and we're not going to do that, right? And then when they find out, oh no, you could also go to prison, they're like, whoa, wait a minute, we got to clean this place up. It's dangerous. And so, yeah, go ahead.
I believe the QAnon shaman also used that argument of the prison was bad for his health.
Yeah.
Prisons are very bad for your health. Long before the COVID pandemic, you have really tight quarters. You don't have excellent medical care. If you want to improve health, decarceration is one of the best proven methods for making people healthy. I think in the US, regardless of your political affiliation, many of us know people who have been incarcerated. We have the highest per capita incarceration rate in the world. Almost 2 million Americans are behind bars. This is an American phenomena. And in a time like COVID, it is just basically tinder for a wildfire to have a pandemic in prisons.
Yeah, so Ivy said that it was an Alabama solution for an Alabama problem. Well, I honestly have no idea what that means. Is COVID an Alabama problem? Because I thought it was pretty international. And how is prison? Do the good folks in Alabama really believe prison is a solution for COVID? Can you decipher it? Do you have any idea what she's talking about?
These are all excellent questions, so I'll try to remember all of them. But first, I think what Governor Ivey is referring to is the lawsuits against the state of Alabama. The Department of Justice has brought lawsuits because of the conditions of the prisons, which they say are the worst in the country. They're inhumane. I don't know if they say they're inhumane, but they're very bad conditions. They both because of prisoner-on-prisoner violence, but also because of violence from the corrections officers on the inmates. So I think that is part of the Alabama problem, but Alabama also has some of the worst COVID rates in the country, some of the lowest vaccination rates. They have a huge problem with COVID. Their hospitals are at the breaking point, if not already broken. And so to see this money go toward incarcerating more people and potentially spreading the disease more when you could invest in health systems, you could invest in social services that help prevent the spread of COVID.
Yeah, you know, look, first of all, I'll call it inhumane. There's no question those prisons in Alabama are inhumane. And it is an Alabama problem. You're right, that the prison part, not the COVID part, but the prison part is an Alabama problem because they abuse the living crap out of their inmates and have them in terrible conditions. And then their Alabama solution is do more of that. You know, and so if Alabama's got solutions, they certainly haven't shown them, okay, because they rank near the bottom in almost every category, and you're right, also in COVID. So as COVID is an international problem, Alabama has it worse than not only almost any place in the country, but almost anywhere in the world. Their rates are so astronomical because the idiots won't vaccinate themselves.
And you'd asked if this will affect COVID. Basically, if they actually believe that this is going to. From what I understand, they see this as an influx of cash to the state that they can use more or less without any restrictions. It's seen as a way to replace tax revenue. Basically, the only thing you can't use this funding for is pensions and I think tax cuts. And so they say, well, we lost money during the pandemic, so we're going to use this money that we need to invest in prisons, and prisons are one of the big employers. They're an enormous source of income, and so I think that they're thinking of this as a money issue, not as a COVID issue at all.
Oh, Republicans thinking of it in terms of money instead of protecting people's health. I would have never guessed that. Well, color me shocked. And by the way, some red states are using it for tax cuts for the rich, and the Biden administration isn't doing anything about it. God forbid they should ever challenge Republicans. Anyways, but I want to now turn to the irony here, which is that, well, they do need to fix the prisons in Alabama. They are in disastrous shape. So that could potentially be a good thing, not related to COVID, and they shouldn't use COVID money, but they do need to fix the prisons, right?
They need to fix the prisons, but I mean, the reason the state of Alabama is being sued by Department of Justice isn't because of the crummy conditions of the prisons. They note that the prisons aren't in good shape, but the problem is an endemic culture of violence. Building a new prison isn't gonna fix culture problems. They need staff training, they need to be working. There's just an entire revolution that needs to happen in this correction system, according to the Department of Justice.
Yeah, so that's a great point. Yes, they need a paint job. Yes, it'd be nice to rebuild the infrastructure of those prisons, which I'm sure are falling apart. But that isn't the number one problem. The number one problem is a problem they admit to, right, Melody? The culture of violence. They talk about it in every story, and about the staff abusing the prisoners endlessly. Why couldn't KIV start to fix that now? You don't even necessarily need to spend any money to do that. You do need to spend a little bit of money, one, to hire more staff, and two, to tell them that the prisoners are not your playthings to abuse because you have psychological problems.
I asked about this. I asked about sentencing reform and what could be done that doesn't involve massive $1.3 billion construction projects. They say that that's a long-term issue, that this is a short-term fix. Building a prison is a short-term fix, and that these are long-term cultural issues that they're working on. It's hard to say. I don't know how much has changed.
Okay, no, that explains. I'm so glad we had this conversation. Now I get it. I was naive for a second. For some reason, I wasn't connecting. Now I understand what's happening. They're not going to fix the culture of violence. They're going to have same short staffing. They're still going to tell the staff to kick the living crap out of the detainees, no matter what they did. It's so they can funnel money to the contractors building the prisons, who I guarantee you are donors to KIV and Republicans in Alabama. So. Look, I'm not your editor, but I'd look into that next, because I'm going to guarantee you they're Republican donors that are going to get this $400 million.
As they say in journalism, follow the money.
100%. You follow the money and you will find Republican donors. This is not to help anybody in Alabama except the wealthy construction guys and the contractors that I'm guaranteeing you have contributed to the corrupt KIV and every other corrupt Republican in Alabama. All right, that's my opinion. Melody Schreiber's from The Guardian, good piece on it. We appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.